Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Luain Press podcast. Today we are here with Ajaz Qureshi, who is I suppose I suppose we could say an up and coming poet. This is his first collection, The Full Nelson. Not to be confused with The Full Monty, but it's no, very it's came out this year, 2024, so hot out of the oven. And Ajaz is he's got an MA in creative practice. He's got his BA in English literature and creative writing as well. What is when I saw that creative practice, that's kind of a bit different from just creative writing.
I
Tell us a
think,
bit about that, Jazz.
of course, I was quite intrigued when I came across the subject as well. So, creative practice is an emerging subject, and it's basically taking the arts practices like we have writing and dance and sculpture and any kind of artistic practice, and trying to make it almost like a STEM subject, like a science or not that we can make research in the same way as we can in the sciences, but using art and the creative practices that we have as an essence of impacting the real world through research and through, creative outputs that have an impact and change the world. I think a lot of academic kind of acknowledgement is to the sciences and not much is given to the arts. So creative practice is that it's basically professionalism and creativity together.
Very good.
Uh,
Yeah.
an interesting subject, it was quite a difficult subject to put together because it's not just about artwork, like creative writing is, for example, or a fine art degree is. It's a mixture of all of these things, and it's okay. You have the artwork. What are you doing with it? Why is it there? What does it matter? What does it mean? How does it impact the world? So a lot of my master's degree was to do with the ideas of space and place. So how a space becomes a place and how we imbue it with meaning and how that informs our identity at the same time.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's
yeah, that's a long way around it, but it's basically professional creativity,
yeah, that's cool.
professional creativity,
Space and
almost like
place. Yeah, space and
yeah.
place. It's definitely a thing in the Full Nelson anyway. So I suppose yeah. Before we get into the book, maybe you can just tell us a bit. Obviously, you're from Nelson, Lancashire.
I'm
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
yeah.
So I'm from Nelson, Lancashire, which is where the name came from. It is my hometown. I did leave here. I did leave the area when I was about 16. I'm now 35, and I came back here when I was about 32. So I had 16 years here and 16 years away. And so when I came back, I started viewing Nelson through different eyes, and I started experiencing in a different way. And because I did come back as a writer, one of the things that I wanted to do was write about these places that I had or that I was in, and slowly this compilation, this sequence came over about 2 years. Not that I'm a slow poet, it's just sometimes it's curation and rewriting. So yeah, that's what it really came out for, was what does Nelson mean to me, and you know.
Yeah.
And one of the research projects that I came out was the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, which I live quite close. It's about 500 meters down the road, and I've always been walking along the towpaths. And one of the things that I started to do was research it, and I realized that the Leeds and Liverpool Canal was the first thing that was made in Nelson, and alongside like a train station and a pub, apparently.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, yeah, and it sort of became communal then, and because we had the Leeds and Liverpool Canal, a lot of factories sprung up on the sides. They say it sprang up like mushrooms, overnight almost. So that's why a lot of the poetry collection is to do with like industry and like
Yeah.
industrial heritage and especially the canal and especially the canal.
Yeah, and it feels like the collection is like an odyssey, and you start from you literally move along the canal, and one of the poems is about bridges, and it's literally just as you're moving through, going beneath these like different bridges and taking in the scenes and meditations along the way, which I thought was really cool. So it's
I
so
tried
you,
to
you
make
you start the first page, you say you are here, and I actually did look up the coordinates. Um, so I don't know if you ever build up a huge fan base, they're going to know exactly where you live. But
where I lived.
Oh,
which
lived.
is
Oh well, God
I
love
did.
the people that are
That was
there.
a
You
child.
know. But
Thank you. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no, that's cool.
But it was a choice for me whether I should put that coordinate in the town center or my childhood home. And I think my childhood home had a bigger marker on me, so you
Mm,
know, so
you have the marker
that's
there.
why I chose that. I mean, they're all creative choices that I put in there. I think in the poetry collection, there's a lot of hidden meaning, which is not evident on first read or even a reread. It's kind of maybe I've written it for myself in that way, but it's kind of coded, but also accessible. It's also accessible for the people that are in these places. So yeah, yeah. Thank you for that because it does mean that you did have a particularly good read of it, and all a
Yeah,
writer wants ever is to be read. You know,
exactly. Yeah, no, it's cool.
great to have.
The uh, the second poem, Breach. So it talks about the breach. It's only a short poem. I can even just read it here. So breach. Collapsed 1 billion liters poured out into the cracks of the vulnerable wooden culverts, converging into the mouth of the coal mines, blackening like the sticks. And then you have a little note that just says the Leeds and Liverpool Canal was breached in the early hours of the morning of um, 11th of October 2021. And then the next poem, then, am I right in saying that maybe it's called "Stay Away from the Edge" is the next poem, and it almost feels
Yes,
like a continuation or a successor to the previous one. It's about. Am I right in
almost. I
saying
tried
that
to.
because forgive me, I live in Ireland. I'm not too familiar with the area, but I feel like I know this area a lot more now just from reading your poems. But is this saying that after the water drained, that there was like the canal and river trust, they put up protections and people, you described
Yeah,
them then
yeah. Well,
jumping over
interesting.
the, yeah,
I will let you know in the end of this sequence there's a poem called Northern Monkey. And Northern Monkey is a group. I found them on YouTube, you can find them in, and they basically go into these like these culverts and underneath the underground into the coal mines, into places that I would not even dare venture. And yeah, they take hard hats with GoPros and they show you all of these places. Like, look, this is what was here before. And when the canal was breached, all of the water drained out of the canal. They went there, you can watch the video of it, and they saw the Canal and River Trust. And as soon as they turned their back, they jumped the fence and they ran off and they explored it. And it was quite interesting because the Canal and River Trust are immediately there when anything happens to any of the water, sources in the UK. They are immediately there trying to fix it because it's a lot of money for them, water wastage and things like that. So it was quite nice. So I did put that there as well. The title "Stay Away from the Edge" actually comes from if it's an acronym which means safe, SAFE. So it also has that element of it
yeah,
also has that element of canal safety. And what I wanted to do is have the idea of something, like laughing in the middle of the poem. They are laughing at the end of the poem. It's a tragedy, So I kind of
yeah,
yeah,
do
so
that,
it's
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of a narrative of yeah.
Were you witness to this? Did you
Um,
see the
I wasn't witness to, well, I did see. I knew it was drained, and we saw it drained, but where it was drained was a bit further along. It was in Rishton, which is about 10 miles across, but it did affect a whole range of the canal. It affected a lot of it straight away because once that I'm not sure if you know, but the canal bottoms are built of like it's like a clay sludge kind of thing.
yeah,
So it kind of opened up and just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and it became a sinkhole, and it just drained
oh,
off into the river.
right, geez, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah,
Maybe,
so the
maybe
sequence is like that. The sequence is that way. It is connected in that way, but also it's not every poem, as a poet, as a reader, every poem is its own poem. That is not,
yeah,
it's its
yeah,
own entity at the same
yeah,
time. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. It's just, but I suppose they all complement each other. Like there's definitely a theme running through them, and but they can be read by themselves as well. Maybe because we talked a bit about that, maybe you could read us that poem, "Stay Away from the Edge." And I'm only realizing that now, actually. Yeah, safe. That never that's it's only becoming clear to me now. But
Do you know
yeah,
what
if you'd
I
like,
like this poem? Yeah, of course. So stay away from the edge. Nimble, they lunged crazes and cracks and hopped the orange safety net placed by the canal and river trust over the stone walls and embankments into the emptied mud and metal basin of the canal bottom. and picked rusted pennies out of the sludge and found an old medicine bottle, still marked with stench, 100 years old, still filled with the stench of a dark brown liquid that stained like strong tea, and dared each other to drink it. Laughing in the middle of the dig, unsure of where they ended up or started like a rainbow, as the rain stopped and the sun shone, and they saw a feather in a little pool of water, unsure if it was a down feather or a flight feather, fostering an egg, spotted, cracked, with a half-formed webbed foot falling out. A tiny tragedy. Thank you.
Very nice.
Yeah, quite. It's a nice narrative poem as well. It has like a kind of movement in it, a movement.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, no, it's one of it's the first one that really jumped out at me. Did the guys drink it in the end, the dench, or did they? I suppose they couldn't risk that.
That's up for the reader to decide. That's up for the reader to decide and take
Okay,
with
yeah, no,
them.
I
Yeah.
like it. I like it. Very good. Then shortly after we come to the a sonnet for the Führer
Yeah,
Scribendi.
the Furo Scribendi. Yeah, the Furo Scribendi. So I've got a little picture of it here, which is on a postcard. So that is the Furo Scribendi. And it is basically so one of the reasons that I wrote this poem is while I was when I moved back to my area, one of the things that I did was apply for lots of writing commissions and residencies and things like this, to try to make my practice more professional. And Scribendi, they were offering writer's residency aboard the boat. So I messaged the producer and the artist, got to know them really well, and they invited me on a day on the boat, and I really liked what I saw there. So the Scribendi is a repurposed narrowboat, and it holds the largest collection of short stories in the UK. And so you can Google the website. It's also called Small Bells Ring. Small Bells Ring. It goes under two names. And the name Furo Scribendi comes from an essay by a writer called Octavia Butler. Octavia E. Butler, I think, and she wrote a poem called an essay called Furo Scribendi, and it means furiously writing. And yeah, so I stayed aboard the boat. I did a small residency there. They invited me back a couple of times. I ended up, I've been working with them or alongside them for a couple of years now. So I've ended up producing a few short stories for them and a few different poems for them that are not in this collection. But are available elsewhere. And so, yeah, I wrote this sonnet dedicated to the RV Furo Scribendi because I thought it deserves it, and it deserves a traditional form that is everlasting. So yeah, the sonnet is what it was, what it became. And I think it does really show what the boat is,
Mm,
like it's
yeah.
like a home for, a gallery, a home. And it is a fantastic artwork. It's a functional artwork, which is, I really like what the artist Heather Peak and Ivan Morrison, they're a duo. I really like what they've done that. And so that's what they do as well. They make functional artworks and sculptural artworks that, also have impact in the real world. Yeah.
So
And so, yeah,
Heather Peak, did she painted the boat? Am I right in saying
she,
that?
she, she made the boat
Who made the boat?
from, so it was almost a shell. If you see the boat, it is it's one of the best things. It's really heavy because there's so much material in it. I mean, it's all handcrafted wood and the circles. And they were almost talking about Heather, and they were like, we cannot get to Heather's level because she did everything over like 5 years. She made everything in that boat. I mean, her most recent project, just to go off, she bought a coach, a whole coach. She emptied it out and repurposed it as an observatory, and she put a big dome roofed on it with a huge telescope in the middle. So she takes it out to like Wales and Scotland and uses it as an observatory. I think that's what they called, aren't we? Where you look at the night sky. Yeah, so that's what she does, Heather. It's a phenomenal artwork. I like to call it an artwork because that's what it is, and that's what she calls it.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
cool.
so
Yeah, it's and yeah, it's a fun. Yeah, it's like a floating library essentially.
yeah, it's a floating library. Yeah, you can sleep on there, you can stay on there. Yeah, also thanks to, one of the reasons the next poem is the bridges. And the reason that it does go through the bridges is because while I was on the Scribendi, we really worked well together. They offered me a helmsperson training. So I took helmsperson training so I could moor and steer the boat and take it.
Oh,
Yep. So one of my trainers, Roy Fletcher, he taught me a lot about boating, which is where a lot of the knowledge comes from in the Bridges poem. So the sonnet, the Arvis Furus Scribendi is a sonnet, but these are tanker poems. So they are tanker poems, so like 5 7 5 7 7, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 7 7. So even this has a form. It has
yeah.
21 tanker poems. So which is why sometimes maybe the rhythm goes out a little bit. But I did, I mean, from a language perspective, because I'm normally a free verse poet. I normally don't write you know, I don't normally write using structure in.
So are the bridge poems, are they meant to be read as one large poem, or are they kind of?
Yeah, it's like, each one is a separate bridge. Each one is a separate bridge until we get to the lock. And then I'm not sure if you've ever been on a canal on a narrowboat, but when you get to a lock, they're like steps. They're almost like steps that you have to get in. So you have to get into the lock and you have to fill it up with water and then get to the next step, which is what I tried to emulate in
Oh,
that
yeah.
lock section of that poem.
Cool.
If you have a reading of this properly online, a lot at Readly Marina, it's somewhere on my YouTube. Yeah. Yeah, I really like this poem because yeah, it's very not I don't want to say formulaic, but it's almost, like a very rhythmical kind of,
Mm. No, it is.
as I
Yeah.
said before, there's always some kind of movement in my poems. I try to, you know,
Mm.
not only for the poem itself, but for the reader to get to the end of the poem and to take something from it, take
No,
from
definitely,
it.
and it's cool. Like, and you can feel the journey of the day because it starts in the morning and it finishes by you can say the last one home mooring and finishes at evening, and it's really kind of
And
and
even
the yeah. Sorry, go on. Sorry.
yes, no, no, I was just saying that whole first selection is more or less about the canal then, because the last bit there where it does finish is tunnel vision. And instead of
Coming out
finishing
into
at
the light.
yeah, it finishes on a breath instead of finishing on that. And I really like that idea of coming through the end of the tunnel. Seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, people normally think of it as like, either a good moment or death. But I decided to put, we take a breath then because it's when life begins. So
Mm. Yeah,
yeah,
and then there is a shift in the because I'm literally even on the contents page, you can see after tunnel vision, there's this line, in the breath.
yeah. I
It goes
mean,
into more,
I think it
I
goes to
suppose,
more ground based kind of. So
yeah, yeah.
you, I'm just trying to skip through it here a little bit, but then we get to Crown Point, and Crown Point is actually the
I looked into
the
that.
highest.
There was a
It's the
car crash that happened in I made a note of it here. So it was a BMW driver. Am I right in saying that?
yeah.
Yeah.
Please tell me your interpretations of it. And did you?
Let me see.
Because it is quite a busy place. It is quite a busy place because, and it is a B road, a back road where, the speed limit is 70 miles an hour. And, people are often breaking that.
Mm. Um,
And,
yeah. So no, no. Well, I actually looked into it. I read it up, and no one actually. Obviously, car crash is horrific, but thankfully, no one died, I believe.
yeah, see,
Uh,
nobody died yet. Yeah.
so I think like normally, when you read the news and something horrific like that happens, and particularly if someone died, I could understand it might have a real impact or shock. But you put yourself in this. You say I didn't see it but heard. I didn't see it but smelled.
Well, we'll say in a poem, the eye is not the writer eye, is it? It's always the poetic eye. And when you write a poem, it's always, how do we put this narrative together? So even though my name is on the front, I'm gonna say every poem that I have never written, I've never put myself in it, It's almost impossible to put yourself in a piece of literature or a piece of work.
Yeah.
It's an idea, the eye of the poem is. I mean, that's very that's very theoretical and things like that. But sometimes when you write a poem, you just have to find the narrative. And once you find that narrative, and sometimes if I say it like he didn't see it but felt it, it's not, maybe I couldn't even have written that I would have had to remove that, or maybe written
Oh yeah,
something
yeah.
else as the poem.
No, but I just thought it was
It
like
all
uh
it,
my interpretation was that wow that it must have because sometimes what they say a lot of poets have deep souls and they kind of they like to put them or they imagine what they try. I think what makes poets you well a good poet what makes a good poet unique is they can put themselves in
interesting.
someone else's shoes, and that's why I think this crash, even though no one died, so it wasn't even the worst crash in the world, but it still had an impact on you, and you still could like visualize and imagine it, and that's my interpretation of it was that it just really resonated with you, even though it was like I said, thankfully not not a fatal crash. But that was just my taking from it.
And thank you. I think you've had a brilliant reading of my collection because, you're making me think of questions that I perhaps haven't thought of myself, which is,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, no, well, look, the next poem, which is probably my favorite one in the collection, Panopticon.
yeah.
There's so much going on there, and I'll just even show viewers just so they can see the form. So like it looks bizarre on the page, but it looks really cool as well. But then you read it, and then the repetition of the lines, after a while, it sounds like an echo, you know. Uh,
So I'm not sure if you did any research on that one because that one was one particular one that I wrote
well,
for a reason. I wrote
I
it
did a
in
bit
that
of
way.
research into what a panopticon is, and it's that was weird. About a prison basically where there's a central watchtower that watches all the cells, that kind of thing.
Also, I do have, we talked about, I'm not sure if that, but about contextualizing a lot of these poems, and sometimes it's hard. And so, very simply, I'm going to say a panopticon, you are right, it is the central, it's like a guard tower in a circular prison that can see all of the prisoners at the same time, or any one of the prisoners that it wants at any given time. So basically, everybody's being watched. It's a philosophical concept. But panopticon, in Lancashire, there are four panopticons, and they are structural artworks. You can see them,
Ah,
they're called the four panopticons of Lancashire. One is called the halo, one is called the atom, one is called the color fields, and this one is called the singing ringing tree. And so singing ringing tree particularly is I don't have an image of it. Maybe I do. So the singing ringing tree is um it's a metal structure made out of 322 metal pipes, and it is in the shape of a tree. I'm just going to try and get a quick image of it.
well,
So I'm not sure
we
how
can put it
clear
in.
that
Oh,
would
I see it
be.
there. Oh yeah. Oh wow. Okay. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I think I've seen that
So
before somewhere. Oh yeah,
maybe
your
on my
Instagram. Oh
Instagram.
yeah, yeah, your Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, so this is built upon top of Crown Point, and it is an art, and it's a singing ringing tree. So when you go there, the wind blows through it, and it makes a song, or as much as it makes a musical rhythm. Let's say that it's quite eerie actually, right?
Yeah.
And so in that layer, there are 21 or 21 layers, I think, and 322 pipes. So in the poem, there are 21 lines that are repeated, and there are 322 words. So that poem is the structure,
Yeah, and
right? That
it
poem is the
looks
structure.
it's the shape of it as well. The actual shape.
It was a lot of work. It was a lot of work to put it together. So
Yeah.
it isn't, and basically I had a little stall on the market, and I printed this bit out. I got a big print of it, and I put it out. And the architects, or not the architects, the commissioners of the architects who built it, they saw it from around the corner, and they came up to me and they were like, "Oh, that's our work." And I was like, "Well, that's my work." Let's put it together. And he was called Nick Hunt. Great guy, great guy. But they run a program called Mid Pennine Arts, and they do lots of big commissions like this. So they commissioned one of this panopticon. I'm not sure if they did all of them. I don't know too much about the others. So yeah, I wrote it as a dedication for that. So it's a real world place.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. And this is the only poem that really nothing really happens in it because what I just wanted to do is like a panopticon. It's just, you know, taking in all of them sights and sounds and feelings and giving them back, singing them, repeating them.
Mm.
And
It's strange you
so
said. It's strange you say that nothing
I'm
happens because when I was reading it, you know,
okay.
I tried
Yes.
reading it just without repeating the lines because I was curious. So I just read the bold. So when I read through it first the way it was intended to be read. Then the second time I did a reread, and I just read the bold lines, you know, and it didn't have the same impact at all. But when you repeat the lines, it is, and you use the word eerie. There is something kind of haunting about it, especially when you get to the last line at the I dome an ear to the ground and listen
Yeah.
to its soul. I dome an ear to the ground and listen to its soul. At the roots, I contemplate my own. At the roots, I contemplate my own. And it's just, yeah, like if you were to read any of those lines by themselves, like it doesn't have half as much impact as just the repetition of it because it just makes you kind of, I don't know, when you're forced to say it again, it just sticks with you more, I think, which is
Yeah.
cool, like, you know. So that's why
And
I think, yeah,
you
it's
know
probably my
what?
favorite one in the collection.
When you're up at Crown Point, I think it does also make you look at everything again and again and again because you're in such a high place. There are unbroken views, and you know, yeah, and that silence that it has there makes you maybe that silence that is there, when you do say something, it echoes,
Mm, yeah.
because it's not drowned out by anything else. It's just that, and it's just that, and it's just that, and it's just that.
Yeah, no, it's cool. It's mysterious.
So yeah.
Uh, but I think
Yeah.
that's why I was
So
intrigued by
I
it because
try
I
not
could.
to do too.
Sorry, go on. Sorry. Yeah.
No, no, sorry, I don't want to keep interrupting you. I don't like to write too many typographical poems, but yeah, that there has, I've got a few more which I can just show the camera quickly. So I developed this one which didn't go into the collection. Um, so the area that I live, the postcode is BB9. So what I did was I collected all of I'm not sure if you know how a UK postcode works, but it's like three, two letters and a number, and then a number and two letters. So they are all the last three digits, but I put them into the shape of BB9 just to show that's like every single postcode in our area.
Wow.
And yeah, it's just like nice typographical thing. But yeah, sometimes I like to have that idea and think, okay, it can be a poem, but what's a way that I can make it poetic? Yeah.
Mm.
What's a way to elevate not only my own craft but the poem itself? So I'm not sure if it did elevate it, but listening to your review of it, yeah, I think it. Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's cool. Yeah, I enjoy
yeah.
it. Probably my favorite one in the
It
collection.
does have the
As I said.
intended effect.
And
It
I
does
think it
have the
was
intended effect.
because I think it's because as well because I couldn't understand it as well. Or I was trying to make sense, and then I was looking into Panopticon and the prison thing, and I was like, but
Yes.
that's interesting. You mentioned the four Panopticon
I
pieces
think
around.
anybody locally that reads it would get it straight away
Right.
because they know the structure is quite popular. Like I said, isn't it? It's one of our landmarks.
Yeah,
So yeah, it does
really
get a lot
cool.
of love.
Um,
Yeah.
just a couple of so I'm just conscious of time, so we've just about 8 minutes left.
Yeah,
But
sorry, I've been rambling away, and I don't feel like I've managed to give a lot of what this collection is. I know it's only a short collection, 24 pages, but this is so dense, and I'm not just saying that because I am the writer. I did put this together, and as a writer who does have a master's in the craft and has been writing for 20 years, it like almost I try to
yeah, no, I
make
get you.
this as
I do get you, and that's why I was surprised, especially on the second read through. I was like, there actually is a lot to this, even though it's only a short one, as you said. But it's there is so much. Just as well, I just want to talk about the trees. Um, the
yeah, the
trees
trees. So,
is kind of like I got the sense there's a bit of a sort of an economic divide in Nelson. You talk about like, well, maybe you can elaborate a bit on it.
Yeah,
That's
so
what I
I'll try
got.
to if it's possible. So I grew up on a house called Barkhouse Road, and barker, like a bark, like a tree bark. And I noticed that a lot of the streets that go off it are like Pine Street, First Street, and Barkhouse Road are where all the like real big houses were and all the offshoots. But the town is split. at the bottom we have something called like Every Street, which is where all the factory workers used to live. And as you get more, I'm not sure which direction it owners used to live. So their houses were much bigger. And I chose the name Roland because it does mean renowned of the land, like the owner of the land. And I wanted to just have this idea. And also Buckhouse Road was where I grew up. So I tried to write, that poem was quite removed from me as my own experience, but it was kind of a experience from maybe what Nelson used to be. So I did write the poem again in a different way. So this one I've done again, but this is a different style. So I've written it as what do you call it? Acrostic poem. Yeah.
Mm.
So it says Barcross Road, and this one really does delve into my childhood rather than, and I tried to emulate the idea of, the streets running off it, but it didn't really work. It didn't really work. But you can see I'm trying to formulate that idea again. Yeah, but the trees, yeah, and it was just about the idea about how this place belongs to us. Um, I do want to say just before, I know we don't have much time left, but at the same time as I released this collection, on the same day as my launch day of this collection, which I do have to mention, it's published by Pendle Press. And
Yeah,
Pendle Press are a small northern publishing company that really focus on the arts. And so recently they published this book by Sam Hanna, and it's a visual legacy of Burnley, and it's a poetic legacy of Burnley. And they've got a book. You can check them out, Pendle Press website. And this is how he started. His father was an exiled Libyan artist who ended up living in our local area and started teaching the arts. And after he passed away, his son Sharif picked up all of his artworks and decided to publish it. And because he did that, he got lots of support from the local area and was able to open a publishing company. And I really like the work that Sharif is doing because Pendle Press is, really forward move. It's a forward movement for a lot of us local northern creatives, which are often, neglected by the
mm.
the powers that be. So on the same day as this, I was also commissioned by my local council to produce um, a poem dedicated to my town for World Poetry Day 2024. And so I wrote a poem to the theme of How I Love Thee. And I wrote a poem called This Town is an Old Hand-Me-Down Sweater, where I made the metaphor of, the town being a sweater that is shown from our local wool and made in our mills and sold in our markets and given to us all, and we all share it, we all wear it, we've all put holes into it, and it's still ours and it's still got time to grow. And when it finishes, we'll make a patchwork blanket. It's quite a good poem, and this poem was displayed in a large scale on the library.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so you can see that as well. Yeah, honestly, because it's just that it's very space specific. I know we didn't get really into that, but really what I try to do is make a work that's specific to the place that I'm from and the place
Yeah,
that I am now.
very good.
And so,
Yeah, and
yeah.
that was going to be my next question. I
So
was
I
going to
know
ask
I
about
rolled.
Pendle Press. Sorry, go on. Sorry, I think there's a bit of a lag going on. That's why.
No, no,
Oh, sorry.
I
I was
don't
just
want to
gonna. That was
interrupt
going
you
to be
at
my
all.
next
You
question
can.
about Pendle Press. They So you when did you approach them? You approached them some point. Was it like last year or something, or how did you just send it off and they were?
Yeah. At the end of I was looking at a lot of Pendle Press's work, and I was really as a first time writer, it's really hard to approach people as well, because rejection is quite a common thing. And I think our kind of ideas of what we wanted for our futures really fell in line. And since I worked with Pendle Press on a few things, like I did do the launch of this last week along with a filmmaker in a group of schools, and his work is in like the Manchester Film Archives. So yeah, there's a lot of potential and I think we just gelled and worked really well together. Interestingly, we were in the same year at school, but just in different schools, and I had never met him before
Good.
this moment. But yeah, so you can check them out at pendlepress.co.uk. Yeah,
Yeah, they're uh,
yeah, yeah.
they're local as well to you, which is great as well because obviously it's a very
Yeah,
local focused story.
yeah.
So
Well, Pendle Hill is our famous landmark, Pendle Hill,
yeah,
which I didn't mention, but it's got really famous witch triangles and all sorts.
very good. Yeah, and I saw when I was looking into Nelson, it's in the the borough of Pendle as well, which is that's a good
And
name.
yeah, so there's a poem in here called The Witch Way, which is a dedication to Pendle Hill. It's a really famous hill. Pendle Hill, interestingly enough, means Pen means hill, Dale means hill, and hill means hill. So it's the hill,
Very
the
good.
Pendle.
Yeah, very good.
So I know we only have a couple of moments left, so
We
would
have I tell you that we've just under 2 minutes. So if you want to read maybe just one more poem from the collection, maybe a
I
shorter
will
one.
read the opening poem. For anybody that comes to the collection, they can take it from there, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, you are here is all that matters on this map. Here, a place and a moment, space and time in a transient bonding, not measured in acres or ages or in any known unit. The furthest we have reached, a breach, exiles emerging from the long past, never able to go back. But in our present, ever present, we move ever forward. I think
Ajaz
that's all.
Qureshi, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you very
thank
much.
you.
And I'm sorry we didn't have more time.
Honestly, it's excellent. Thank you for reading my collection. Thank you for inviting me to this. And honestly, we will definitely catch up and speak about further things in the future. But honestly,
Please God.
excellent.
Please God.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Guys,
excellent
check him
job for
out.
having.
Ajaz Qureshi, Pendle Press, and follow him on Instagram as well. Thank you for watching today, guys. Be sure to like, follow, and share. Thank you as well, Ajaz.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank